we are called to reflect on the question of taking vows, making commitments to the Lord. In the first reading, we read how Jephthah, who was an army commander and was supposed to attack the Ammonites, and he made a vow to the Lord that if the Lord delivered the Ammonites into his hands, the first person that he meets from the door of his house when he returned in triumph, that person he will offer him up as a holocaust. What is your reaction to this so-called vow that he took? First and foremost, we think it's rash and stupid. And not only that, how could he make such a vow to God? Even if he really was concerned for his people, does it mean to say a good deed can always be, what we call that, achieved by a bad means? And then, on top of this, what was he thinking in his mind? Who would be the first person to meet when you return home? Surely not delight or joy. It will be your wife, your daughter, your children who will come to greet you. Even if delight and joy, I will have difficulty sacrificing them. Talk about your child or your wife. I mean, how could he do such a thing? So, I think he was a bit rashful. Not a bit, he was rashful in making that decision. Maybe perhaps he thought that the prayer will never be answered anyway. Just say it for fun, maybe to challenge God. Whether it could happen, we do not know, honestly. And then again, perhaps some scholars suggested that this might not be a real historical event, but it was written in order to condemn child sacrifices in those days. The Canaanites around the Israelites, they were offering child sacrifices to their gods. Perhaps this was an example to show how evil child sacrifice could be. But even then, the point is this: when you make this as an example, not only we are doing injustice to an innocent child, but also doing injustice to God, as if God would want the death of an innocent person to appease him, and in order for him to help us. This is unthinkable of God. Our God cannot be like that. This kind of God is not worth worshipping. Don't talk about loving him. He doesn't deserve to be worshipped. So, where do we stand? So, we're not too clear how this story came about. But perhaps if we see it on a more positive side, one thing it does tell us is that vows, promises are to be taken seriously. That is a good point about Jephthah, which is so unlike for many of us today. Unfortunately, today, vows in modern world are taken as a matter of fact, without any serious thought as well. Marriage vows are broken, ordination vows, religious vows. We take, but we don't really observe them seriously. I wonder how many religious take their vows of celibacy, obedience, and poverty seriously. I'm not too sure. We take very nice ordination, but actually, how many live that vows that they take? Or marriage vows for that matter. Then today also in the court, we take promises. How many tells the truth? Also, I'm not too sure. If everybody is telling the truth, then the judge should have no problem trying to settle the case. Trouble is that we can take all the vows we want, but we will try to, hide as much as we can so that we will not be what we call judged guilty. So, what is the value of all these vows when we're not going to take them seriously? So the great thing about Jephthah, therefore, is that we need to take our vows seriously. And he was committed. What he promised, he said he would do. And true enough, he went back home, and the daughter appeared before him. And he said, "Oh, my daughter, what sorrow you're bringing me. Must it be you that caused my ill fortune? So, I give the promise to the Lord, I cannot unsay what I have said." A vow to God is a serious thing. That's why don't make foolish vows. Some people, all kinds of vows they make, even private vows. Don't talk about public vows. Private vows. If I strike 4D, I will give the 10 million to the church. Let me see when you strike whether you get 10 million, whether you give the 10 million to the church or you keep maybe 9 million and 1 million to the church. I'm not too sure. So, we don't make this kind of vows. But what is important is that he took it seriously. And so why do people take vows seriously? When will people take vows seriously? I suppose you must have a sense of God in your life. And it's very interesting that her daughter, she was not the one to make the vow. Her father made the vow. And she said, since you have made the vow, I will obey. I will do the will of God. Because in her perspective, she had a fear of God. And since God has rescued his people, a commitment has been made, she said, I will fulfill that promise that you have made to the Lord. So that lady, that girl, also a source of inspiration. I suppose has great reverence for God and felt that even though perhaps the father might not have done the right thing, yet since the vow is made to God, it has to be fulfilled at all cost. That is, the great thing. Of course, we could also think of the other way. Maybe for such a vow, if they have seen me, then if I was a counselor, I would say for that kind of vow, we can release you, because you made it in a moment of rash. But in those days, whatever you say to God, it has to be taken seriously. There is no second chance. And so the girl said, yeah. And also perhaps she could also be teaching a sense of responsibility. Because when you take a vow, especially when it's a public vow or a vow to do something, it's actually even every vow is not just personal. Every vow is also taken on behalf of the community. So when he says, if you let me win the battle, I will do it, because he's making a vow, yes, but also on behalf of the community. When you take a vow, you're also answering, yes, you're making a vow to God, but you also have made a promise to the community that you will keep the promise. So when we break a vow, it is not just a vow to God, but also a vow to people that we have been supposed to be responsible for. Nevertheless, after saying all these things, the good thing about this, at least there is some compassion. They're trying to show some compassion for the vow. It was difficult. So the daughter will have to be sacrificed. And the daughter said, give me 2 months. Nowadays, even for men, when the wife give birth, we give them 2 months or so. It's not only 2 months. The wife, we give how many months? Now the 2 months, our compassionate leave. So this the daughter was given 2 months compassionate leave to go and enjoy herself, and then came back and then be sacrificed. Well, in our times it is unthinkable, but the point was that, the father also had some compassion. You say, give me 2 months, would have asked her to take 20 years perhaps, 2 months leave. So, but the point was that I think there is some exercise of compassion. So I believe that the story is trying to bring up certain things for us, whether you take it literally or not. There are certain points for us to remember. And this actually story also kind of correspond with today's gospel, because in today's gospel we are told that the what we call the king invited everybody to the wedding feast of his son, and which means to say every invitation is a grace of God. Invitation to be a Christian, invitation to baptism, invitation to taking up an appointment, a position, it is always the grace of God. And we need to respond positively to God's grace, and rather than abuse the grace that the Lord has given to us. And so these people were given the grace to be invited to the kingdom, to the banquet, but they rejected. So because of that, they forfeited themselves of entering the joy of the wedding. But then for those people who were invited and they came, but they didn't put on the wedding garments, it's equally bad. So if you said yes to the Lord, okay, I want to be baptized. Those who have been invited to be baptized, invited to know the Lord, and they said no, okay, you reject. And those who said yes, but after that they don't live up to their commitments, they are equally guilty. And the Lord said, for these people, my friend, how do you get in without a wedding garment? So everything that the Lord has given to us, everything is grace, but grace also comes with responsibility. There is no grace without responsibility. So when we are blessed with something, when we are blessed with a position, when we are blessed with resources, it is the grace of God. But this grace demands personal responsibility, not just to God, but to those people that God has placed under our care. Otherwise, we too will forfeit the kingdom of God in our lives.